Thanks everyone for coming out on a beautiful evening. My name is Hannah Phillips. I actually live and work in Montpelier. I'm the State Lands Administration Program Manager, and I work on matters related to management planning and policy of state land management statewide. So part of my job that I love is that we can travel around the state and visiting different land units. Happy to make the drive on such a beautiful evening. And I'll soon turn it over to folks who actually live and work in this part of the state. We are here tonight to really kick off the planning effort for the Hubbardton Management Unit. Our goal tonight is really to walk you through what that planning process looks like, and really primary goal is to hear from you about your interests and engagement with this unit. I want to start by acknowledging that the state lands that we're talking about are owned and managed by the Agency of Natural Resources, which is comprised of 3 departments. So the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation, the Vermont Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the Vermont Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation are the 3 departments comprising the Agency of Natural Resources. The 2 focal units within the Hubbardton Management Unit are technically owned by the Fish and Wildlife Department and the Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation, but all 3 departments play a role in managing those particular units and planning for management of those units. I think we should start by just identifying what is a long-range management plan and why do we develop them. A long-range management plan, you might also hear us refer to it as an LRMP or just the management plan, is a document that guides management of state lands. It generally lasts for 20 years. They are developed by the local land managers, nearly all of whom are in the room tonight. I'll have them introduce themselves at the end. As I said, you'll probably hear us refer to them tonight and throughout the process as an LRMP. And the plan itself includes, among other things, these critical pieces. The first is the assessment of natural resources on the property. Second is the management goals for the next 20 years. Third is the management actions that help us achieve those goals that we will take over the next 20 years. And then critical throughout this whole process, where we're beginning tonight, is the public involvement and your opportunity to engage, weigh in, comment on proposed management for the unit. So the process itself is that mechanism for public involvement. Why do we go through this process of writing long-range management plans? First, by assessing the natural resources on the property, our goal is to really understand the current conditions. What's going on the property? What species do we see? What communities do we see? How are people using this property? All of that is captured and reflected in the natural resource assessments, which you'll hear a little bit more about tonight. The second reason we go through this process is to really understand public desire and opinion. So that's where you come in. How do you engage with the property? What do you like about state management? What would you like to see changed? What ideas or dreams do you have for these properties? This is what we're hoping to start to hear from you about tonight. We want to thoughtfully consider how to balance multiple uses across the 3 departments within the agency. We have a multiple use mission, and we have to think together about how we're managing for things like wildlife habitat, recreation, forest resources, etc. And so it's this process that allows us to consider all of those resources side by side and think about how we can accommodate and balance those different resources. Through this process, we hope to provide the opportunities that the public seeks and that are consistent with the agency and department missions. So again, that's where the public involvement plays a critical role. We want to ensure that management, the actions that we're proposing, are taking us in the direction that we want to go. That's why we're planning on this 20-year horizon, is really to set that goal and think about what are the actions that we can take that will help us get there in that period of time. And to that same end, this is really our opportunity to think big and take the long view, set those goals, identify the actions that are going to help us get there, and kind of chart out what the next 20 years may look like. When we're planning for a particular management unit, and tonight we're talking about the Hubbardton Management Unit, this is really our opportunity to also zoom out and think at the landscape scale across boundaries of ownership. And so although the management plan just applies to the lands that we're tasked with writing management plans for. We are really using this opportunity to zoom out and think about where these lands fall in the larger landscape context, what's happening on the lands around it, what other public lands are located in close proximity, and what opportunities do these state lands present as a result of that larger context. So it's an exciting opportunity for us to really think about, to really zoom out and take the big picture. And it allows us to zoom out temporally as well across time and really set those goals and those management actions that can span staff tenure, various state administrations. And by setting that long view, we can really ensure that we have this continuous objective across people and across time as well. So as mentioned, Hubbardton Management Unit, this really outlines the phases of the process at a very high level. The first phase of the process is conducting those natural resource assessments. You'll hear a little bit more about those tonight. Those have been completed, and we're gonna share a bit about what our staff learned when they were conducting those assessments. We're now in the public scoping phase. I also like to think of this as the assessment of public opinion or public interest, one of those initial assessments that we do early in the process. Once we've completed the natural resource assessments and the public scoping, we use that to develop the draft management plan. It's really the people in this room who will be contributing to that draft plan. That process has not yet started, with the exception of the natural resource assessments, which are a big part of the plan. Once we have a draft management plan to share, we share that back out to all of you, and we host another meeting, we present that plan, and there's another comment period, an opportunity for you to ask questions, offer your feedback. We take those comments and the feedback that we've received, and we use that to make a final draft of the plan. So those latter three phases, drafting the plan, accepting public comment on the plan, and then producing a final plan, we haven't started those phases yet. I'd like to just quickly run around the room and talk about who contributes to the planning, and I've organized staff by the department in which they work. So within the Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation, I'm pretty soon going to hand it over to Kyle Mason, who's our stewardship forester in this district. He's responsible for leading planning in the Rutland district. Ethan Crumley is our state lands forester. Ethan, if you just each of you raise your hand as I call your name. State lands forester Rick Heading is our Parks Regional Manager in the back, alongside Quentin McKinley, who's our Parks Operations Manager. Ryan is not here tonight. He's another one of our state lands foresters. From the Department of Fish and Wildlife, we have Travis Hart, wildlife biologist, in the door. Joel Flewelling can't be here tonight. He's another wildlife specialist who sits on the district stewardship team. Luke Groff is a wildlife biologist. Danielle Rozarski is our state lands ecologist. Angie Allen from the Department of Environmental Conservation is a watershed basin planner. She also sits on the district stewardship team. She couldn't be here tonight. And then we also have Jim Duncan, who's our forestry state lands manager, and Leslie Porter, who supports the district in the Rutland office in administration. So all of these folks together comprise what we call the district stewardship team. Within each of the 5 state lands districts across the state, we have these teams that meet together on a monthly basis to discuss management planning, actual management, and land acquisitions for the state lands within those districts. So this team that is mostly here tonight is the team that will be producing this management plan and then also carrying out the management actions on the state lands. So just to give you the quick rundown on tonight's meeting, our goals tonight are to describe the planning process. We've mostly accomplished that already. The second primary goal is to give you an opportunity to share your initial thoughts about management of the Hubbardton Management Unit, to give you a chance to interact with members of the district stewardship team, ask any questions you have, share your feedback. We want to make sure that you know how to submit your scoping comments. It doesn't have to happen tonight. This is the beginning of the comment period. It goes until October 9th. I think you all received that handout as we were coming in that shows the many different ways you can submit a comment to us. So we hope that this is the beginning of you learning more about this unit. You can certainly take time, go visit the unit again with this in mind, check out the resources that we've provided. We have a really beautiful story map that Kyle's going to show you. And you can submit your comments on October 8th or October 9th if you want to take that full month to think it over. Or you can leave tonight and give us a comment before you go. And then lastly, we want to make sure you understand what comes next in this planning process. So quick schedule for tonight, 6 to probably 6:45 informational presentation. I'll hand it over to Kyle in just a moment. And then after we finish the informational presentation, I'll come back up here just to answer any questions you may have about the process. And then the latter part is really, as I said, an opportunity for you to interface with the staff who are here. So we do that in the open house style. We'll have different stations, but really we're all just here to answer your questions, intermingle, and make sure that you leave here knowing what comes next. I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kyle.
So as long as we don't crash the Wi-Fi here, I do have a QR code. If anyone wants to follow along. I'm going to be using our story map instead of a slideshow because I wanted to show you guys how to walk through it in case it's a tool that you find handy. There's also a way that you can submit your public comments through that as well. The Wi-Fi and password is there. As long as this continues to work, we'll try this model. So I'm just going to switch over really quick to the story maps. Give me 1 second to do that. Oh, good. It's reflecting the. Perfect. Okay. Who's that? Daniel just taught me a fancy button here. Well, we'll just stick with this. So, what's that? Oh, it might be because of that. So this is available on that QR code that I sent to everyone. I also have a business card in the back. If you would prefer a link sent to you, I'd be more than happy to email you that. Just ask for it, and it'll take you right to this. Which has a lot of the information. There's some general information about it. As you scroll down, it'll kind of walk you through the entire property. So what I want to do is just kind of walk you through this with this tool so that you can understand how to use this tool as well. So really quick off the bat, up here are all like the main categories. So if you have a topic you want to navigate to really quick, you can use that. I will say too that as you're looking at it on your phones, it doesn't look quite as nice on phones as it does on a computer screen, just because of the way the maps interact. And all these maps are interactive. So whenever you see a map like this, you can move it around, you can zoom it in, whatever makes it easier for you to see. So as you all know, as most of you here know, this is showing where the two blocks are, and the Hubbardton Management Unit is consistent of two parcels. One is the Conic Mountain Ramble State Park, and the other one is the Hubbardton Battlefield Wildlife Management Area. The Wildlife Management Area, although it says Hubbardton Battlefield, it's not the actual battlefield, it's across the street from it. You probably have all seen the Fish and Wildlife parking spot right there. That's the spot to go to access that. Together they make about 672 acres total. The Hubbardton, so that is a picture right there of that pullover spot if anyone wants to go check it out. And as you navigate through this, if you decide to do that, you'll notice there's a lot of links. If you just want to gather, if you're curious what wildlife management areas are or more information on the parcels themselves, keep an eye on the links as we navigate through this tool. But this area, like I said, is accessed from that one point. There's no real trails on this parcel. There's some vast trails, but wildlife management areas in general don't have a recreation component to it, other than hunting and fishing and things like that. Thank you, Travis. Travis is giving me the eyeball. TMR State Park, on the other hand, primary objective is recreation along with other things, but you access it off of the dirt road. This is what the access point looks like right here. There's a little sign that points you right in the right direction. And then you drive down this long road and you get to the parking lot and you're immediately greeted with this fantastic view for those of you that have been there. So this section is all about how the property is connected to the rest of really how this little property affects the landscape around. So it's really easy for us as humans to kind of view parcels from our perspective, from that little, from what we can see. But the way that they affect the world and access around us is really important. And so I just want to highlight that really quick. Vermont in particular is really fantastic as far as connecting the whole northeast of the United States. For those of you that remember me, I brought this up a lot when we were talking about trying to get a property for the town. Same thing, we live in this amazing spot in the state where our connectivity connects the Adirondacks to really the forests of Maine, the forests down south, up into Canada. And if we lose that, we lose the ability for large mammals like bear and other species that really like to travel far and spread their genetics. As climate changes, the ability for plants to move up and down the landscape is really important as well. So as an agency, we look really hard at how to make sure that this connectivity stays intact. It's really important. On the landscape, there's places out there called deer wintering yards. Deer wintering yards are really important for our deer herd in the winter. It's where they yard up when the snow gets really deep. There are no deer winter yards on this property, but when you start to look at it at a landscape level, you start to realize that this property helps connect the different yards in the area that are available. So all the stuff you're seeing in the black with the hash marks, those are all the known deer winter yards. This property is also continentally important or this whole area is continentally important for forest birds that breed up here. So they tend to, they overwinter down south and they tend to migrate up here. And just to give you an idea, the blue on this map is continentally important, the red is globally important, and the green is state. So we live in a continentally important spot for forest bird habitat. There's a lot more information on this as well, if this is a topic you're really interested in. I have some links to, or we've put some links to some Vermont Audubon sites that go into this with a little more detail. So Vermont is broken up into what we call bioregions. Bioregions kind of share similar soils and bedrock, and they really kind of started the foundation of our range. We're in a really awesome spot called the Taconic Mountain Range. We have really beautiful, really calcareous soils that are really, in my opinion, it's some of the best soils in the state. I really like this area. And if any of you have been to TMR State Park, you'll have seen the Japanese garden there. It's not a Zen garden. Most locals call it a Zen garden. That's not the right term. It's a Japanese garden. One of the things that Japanese gardens strive to do is to reflect the landscape on which they are in. And so this Japanese garden that you'll find down there is Kit Davison, who built it. He intended it to kind of reflect the Taconic Mountain landscape. Do you want to pull this one up? So there's all these interactive links on this. So that's, we would encourage you to play around. These are all the streams, and you'll notice that the streams that are on these parcels connect into the Castleton River, and they flow into the Pulteney River, and then they flow into the southern basin of Lake Champlain. So although it's really, I just want to reiterate how important it is that how connected our landscape is. And what we do on parcels like this affects things like Lake Champlain. I don't want to dive too much into this. I have some information here on the historical value of this parcel, but I do want to point out two things. Although the main battle took place on the battlefield, both parcels were involved in the battle, especially the Pittsburgh Ridge, which was when the American soldiers were retreating, they were retreating over the Pittsburgh Ridge, and there was a lot of there was engagements that happened there as they were going. I encourage you to play around with it. I have some really nice links, some videos, and some things in there if you're more curious about that. And for this part, I'm going to turn it over to Danielle to explain it simply.
Hey everybody, my name is Danielle Barsky. I'm a state land ecologist, so I cover statewide and work with all district stewardship teams. I do the natural community assessment for the teams. Hubbardton is it's a special place. This unit is a special place for me. Like Kyle said, I grew up in the Taconic Mountains, so I particularly like this. I live in Barry now, which is mostly kind of Green Mountain area and the Piedmont, but I love these areas because they're so rich in diversity of tree species, bird species, plant species. Before I dive in, how many folks here have gone and visited the Mount Zion and Conic Ramble State Park area? Okay, so most everyone. How many folks have gone to the wildlife management area, walking around there? All right, great. I recommend going to both. And like Kyle said, there's no trails, so you get to make sure you know kind of where you're going, but it's really nice to be able to check out the management area as well. So you know this is a dramatic landscape here, but maybe you don't know how special it is ecologically, and so that's something that I'm hoping I can share with you for natural communities. So when we talk about ecological assessments, what we mean is looking at a systematic look at the land. So we're looking at the geology, the soils, the streams, the wetlands, the plants, and the wildlife, kind of all as a whole functioning system. And so I use a mix of field surveys, aerial imagery, mapping tools, and I'm looking for patterns and relationships on the landscape. One of the key things that our company ecologists focus on is what's called the natural community. So for those of you who aren't familiar with that, it simply means an area where the plants, animals, soils, and physical setting all fit together in a repeating pattern, where we see similarities in the landscape. So an example could be like an oak hickory ridge, a hemlock ravine, floodplain forest. These are all very different, and you know that when you're out there. And these are building blocks of Vermont's biodiversity, largely. So as Kyle said, Hubbardton Management Unit covers about 680 acres, and it's conics. But what's really cool about this site is that we have two geologic formations that meet. We have acidic rock on the summits and this calcium-rich limestone on the lower slope. And that really gives us this incredible mix of habitats. And we mapped about 17 different natural community types here, which is a lot of community types for such a small land space. You know, there are areas where we have, hundreds, 680 acres of just northern part of the forest. And here in 680 acres, we have 17 different communities. I've had the privilege of spending a lot of time here in 2012 for my graduate work at UVM. And so my job was to work on actually creating an inventory when Kit and Mickey owned the property for them. And we didn't know it was going to become a state park at that point. So it's really kind of cool and exciting that that's what happened. So some of my favorite days were in the oak forest on those rocky summits. For those of you that are not on the outcrops, it's just so beautiful. Really, really special. And these sweeping views. And I think that's a good point about how these aren't just natural communities, they're not just categories, but they're places that really are there to inspire us. One of the things I want to show you is that you can interact with this map, and like Kyle said, you can click on the different colors. They'll tell you which natural community that is. You can visit our website, Fish and Wildlife's website. You can actually look up more information about those natural communities and all the things that make them what they are. Let me see if we can scroll down. There we go. So there's that view, one of the eastern views looking over at the other side of the property. So those acidic rocks looking over at that calcium-rich limestone on the other side. And there's our temperate calcareous cliffs. So these are quite rare in Vermont, and they host rare species like the fragrant fern, which is found there. And then this is the open talus, and you folks have probably walked around the open talus too. It's a really cool place to stop and eat lunch. And this is an example of the music maple ash hickory oak forest, which is a mouthful. But because they're so diverse, we have to have all those different trees in the name. And you can see a shagbark hickory there, which we know can be really good for bat habitat. And then totally different, not dry at all, very wet, is this rich northern hardwood forest where we have these slopes, the soil settled down, we create these really enriched habitats with special plants. And the total opposite is this dry oak forest where like the soil's like this deep and it looks like there's grass growing underneath the trees and it's very, very dry. And then we also have wetlands scattered kind of throughout and seeps. And of course, the beautiful waterfall on the eastern side. And then this is a picture of that reserve fern I was talking to you about, and also the purple stem clipgrake, which is also found there. One other thing I wanted to mention is that wetlands, they only cover about 4%, but they're hugely important. They play an outsized role in providing amphibian habitat for breeding, feeding for black bears, and pool seeps that we know help keep streams healthy. When I was out in Hubbardton last year, I was out in the green ash maple swamp, and a bear came, down the hillside where there's a bunch of beech there. And I kind of bear, and it kind of like ran, around, and I thought, am I going to see this bear again like today? But one of the things that's neat is that you have this like knob with all this beech that provides mass food for bear. It's like one of the most nutritious foods they can find. And then you have this wetland alongside of it, which has all these sedges and berries and all these other things. So bears just like love that as a habitat. So the other thing is we're thinking about wildlife movement, like Kyle said, it's part of two very large connected forest blocks, and that's not just important locally, that's important regionally. So yeah, I will be hanging out over here if you want to talk to me about maybe some of the things that you've seen, any questions you have about natural communities, if you want to learn more about them, I'll be there. So thanks.
Sandra. So, Danielle pretty much covered what I was going to say in the wildlife section too. So I'm going to, I'll leave it there. I guess the only thing that's worth noting is we currently have a lease with a farmer there who hays in a way that creates bobolinks habitat. And if you ever have a chance to go out there in July and take a walk around, it's really cool, especially the fields across the road on the east side. It's where I've seen more of them. I've seen them on both sides, but the east side's where I've really seen them. They're like a black bird with like a white coloring with like a little yellow head, and you can just see them skating across the top of the grass, hunting for bugs and insects. They're really cool. So there's significant grass and habitat at TN1. So that's the only thing I think you didn't cover in the wildlife section. There's something to cover, so thank you. There are about 4.5 miles of trails currently on the Taconic Mountain Ramble State Park. Most were laid out by Kit. Pretty much all the main design was laid out by Kit. There's been a couple adjustments to adjust some erosion stuff, but pretty much that's Kit's design. And he just had this amazing, for those that don't know the story of Kit, he bought this property and built these trails, built the Japanese garden, and just invited the public onto his land and just was like, come enjoy this property. And when he passed away, he made sure it went to the state so that everyone could continue to enjoy the property. Really amazing person. So as you navigate this, if you zoom in far enough, you'll see the trail names. So this is just some of the interaction stuff you can do. Oh, there we go. If you click on the icons of the photos, you'll get a photo taken from that spot. So it's a great way to kind of navigate the property and see and understand what the recreational opportunities are there. There is also, as Don New will tell you, he's in the audience, there is also a vast trail that goes through both properties. And that blue hash mark you see there is the vast trail. So there's some nice motorized winter recreation available on the property as well as some cross-country ski trails. And it's a great place to just kind of go cross-country ski through the fields. So there's lots of recreational opportunities. Oh, and I just want to point this out too while I'm here. Every time you get to the end of one of these sections, there's an opportunity to click on this button here, which will take you right to the survey where you can add your comments in that.
Can I ask a question? On the map, between the two, the wildlife management area and then the park to the south, the vast trail, that's private property in between the two,
Correct.
but,
Part of it on the west side is the Hubbardton, is the historic side. The majority of that is private land, yes.
so there's permission for a vast trail.
I don't, that's vast.
So,
Yeah, we don't have any, so that's, we allow us to maintain trails on our properties, but that's their thing. The last thing, is the forest resources on the parcel, well, not the last, but the next thing is the forest resources on the parcel. Ethan did the inventory at TMR. And this is designed to be pretty interactive as well. You can see the property's been broken out into what are called stands. Stands are areas that share similar characteristics. So they might be, although there's 17 natural communities, some of the natural communities are kind of lumped into the same stand. You'll see like, it's just a way to divide the property and an easy way to kind of like think about it. And as you play with this tool, you'll see that there is stand data on all these buttons on the right. And if you click on one of the buttons, it'll take you right to the data that Ethan collected for that stand. So just so everyone knows what we're looking at, well, I have a chance to explain it to you. This right here is composition by basal area. Basal area, that doesn't mean trees per acre. So it doesn't mean that 37% of that stand is sugar maple trees. It means that 37% of that stand, how do I explain it? It's not like it's not the number of trees, it's the amount of volume in there. So it's like a density rate. So like a huge sugar maple would have, a higher basal area than like a bunch of little ash trees or something like that. So keep that in mind as you navigate these. We talk in basal area and forestry. It helps us navigate density ratings. This right here is a quality assessment by species. So again, it's by basal area. The blue is kind of blurry, but each one of those is a different tree species. The blue is what we call acceptable growing stock, which is trees that could potentially, a higher value tree. And then the orange is what we call unacceptable growing stock, which are trees with low value. And then this down here is called the diameter distribution table. It gives you an idea of like the age classes or the size classes scattered throughout the stand. And then this is what's called the stocking chart, which it shows you essentially how well that forest is growing. When a forest becomes dense and it reaches what's called the A line, which is this line up here, it's considered overstock. That's when you start having tree mortality or growth rates slowing way down. The C line, which is this bottom line, is considered to be understocked. That's when you have poorly formed trees growing and it's just not, you might have wind issues or things like that. And the B line is what we would call, is what is defined as optimally stocked. So it's like when you have the highest growth rates in your stand. So the red dot on all of these is the total basal area of the whole stand. And the green dot is just those acceptable growing stock trees. So it gives you an idea of total, and then so you can navigate through this. I'm not going to go through each stand, but you can navigate through this to see the differences between stands. To get back to the map, right at the top is the stand map for whatever parcel we're talking about. It'll take you right to a zoom in of that property. At the very top, if you want an overview of the two, that will take you there. And if you want what I just explained, there's some definitions on all the things on this grass and if you understand them. Water resources already kind of covered this, so I'm going to go through that. And the last thing I just want to make people aware of some of the constraints on some of the properties. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I would encourage you when you're thinking about what you would like to see there to read through the rules for both WMAs, wildlife management areas, and state parks. They're different. There is a right of way through our parcel that allows this landowner to access their home. There is a right of way here that allows us to access the property. And other than that, there are no other encumbrances on the property. And that brings us to the end of the story map. And I'm going to pass it back to Hannah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're just gonna wrap up the presentation portion and then go into the part where we get to have lots of conversations. So before we wrap up, I want to make sure that everyone understands the different ways that you can submit a comment. As I mentioned, tonight marks the beginning of the comment period. It will go until October 9th. So you have a whole month to, as I mentioned before, peruse the story map, visit the properties, talk with us before you submit a comment. You're also welcome to submit your comment tonight if you'd like. So you have lots of options. Different ways to submit a comment. You can do that tonight before you leave. We can either transcribe it for you onto our laptop. You can handwrite a comment if you prefer. We also have that online survey that is linked abundantly throughout the story map. You can't miss it. We put many, many links through there. We would love it if you would take the survey because it's more than just an open-ended, what do you think? It's also an opportunity where you have to ask some specific questions about how frequently you engage with the property, in what ways you engage with the property. And so it gives us a better sense of how people are using these properties. So we do hope you'll take the survey. You can also submit an open-ended comment to our general state lands planning email address. That's on your handout as well. Or if you want to write something and put it in the mail, you can send it right to Kyle, and it should be received by October 9th. The link at the bottom here is to the general page for the Hubbardton Management Unit, which is where we'll provide updates about the management planning process. And also on that website, you'll find all of this same information, the link to the story map, the link to the survey, et cetera. So we hope we've given you all the different links in many different ways. We're going to wrap up the presentation. Before we do, I want to make sure everyone understands what comes next and the planning process broadly. At that point, we'll wrap up, and then we'll have our staff around the room. We hope that you'll stick around, talk with us, ask questions, and we will be here until 8 tonight. So that's the plan. But does anyone have any questions about what comes next with the planning process or how you get to participate in this process? Okay.
Plug really quick.
Yes.
Travis and I are doing a walk on the property on the 21st from 10 to 12. If anyone would like to join us. And I would also encourage folks to reach out to your friends and other residents. Encourage them to work with as much input as possible.
At the end.
The walk is out.
Yeah, we'll be meeting at TMR right in the parking lot at 10 o'clock. Thank you, Travis.
Yes.
I have a question not about the planning process, but is it true that there's an encumbrance, the field management is under farmer's lease, like there's not flexibility there, or is that not true?
I'm gonna-
It's a kind of gravel.
Put that one hand up, maybe.
I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but I can look into it and I can take down your information. Yeah. We have a couple different stations around the room, so I'm just going to point those out, but we will all be here. So we have forest resources over here. We're going to have our wildlife folks right here. Danielle will be here to talk natural communities and ecology. I believe we have recreation in the back corner. And then I will be over by the entrance table along with Jim, our state lands manager in forestry, and Leslie. So with that, we'll wrap up and come talk to us, please. Thank you.